Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. This time round, we're checking out ArmageDooM, a WOD with a terrible pun for a title, and also an early effort by Sgt Mark IV. If you don't recognize the name, he is the man responsible for Brutal Doom, and the quite brilliant Brutal Doom single-player campaign. But this, I would very much regard as a prototype of sorts. Because let's face it, no one starts off fantastic. You've got to build yourself up from somewhere, and this is a testbed for ideas that would eventually make their way into more polished releases further on down the line. And even though this is an early effort, even though it is very rough around the edges and very unfinished in a lot of parts, there's still some impressive stuff going on here, so much so that you might actually recognize this particular chunk of level that I'm playing through here from Grezzo 2, because the makers of that game stole it. Because they're douchebags. Why create your own levels when you can steal bits from everyone else? But as I was saying, there's a lot of impressive stuff here that clearly caught other people's eyes. You've got breakable glass, you've got explodable cars in the street, you just got lots and lots of environmental interactivity, and that's something that Sgt Mark IV has always tried to include in the gameplay of his WODs, and it's something that seems to be a very clear influence from Duke Nukem 3D, and it's certainly not a bad influence to have. Another product of that influence is the level design itself. It's kind of unmistakable, really. A lot of emphasis on realistic urban-style environments, well, as realistic as you can get within the Doom engine. And it has this total effect of making the world within this WOD feel plausible, functional, like it's kind of lived in, and that's a part of Sgt Mark IV's style that I really enjoy. Another thing I quite enjoy about ArmageDooM is that you can do stuff like this. Yep, I am now wielding a toilet bowl as a weapon, and for shits and giggles we're going to find the nearest zombie soldier here, and we're just going to slam him in the face with it. You'll do. But yeah, this is something that you can do with more than just toilet bowls. You can actually use office chairs as well to slam into demons' faces, and to be honest, that's really as far as my experimentation went. Undoubtedly, there's going to be a few more bits and pieces littered around that you can probably mess around with, but ultimately they serve as a distraction from the core gameplay of ArmageDooM. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of this is still rough, still unfinished in a lot of regards, and the combat, and the balance of the combat especially, is something that's still very wonky. Reloading in particular was something that tripped me up on a fairly regular basis here in the ArmageDooM campaign, and as you know, reloading trips me up at the best of times when it's a feature in any given mod, but here, there's just a few more obstacles in the way than I'd like. Basically, when you get weapons like the minigun and above, you'll quickly find that they have quite lengthy reload animations that trigger even when they're completely dry. They don't just click, they launch back into the full animation, and that actively stops you from switching to something better, or something with, you know, actual ammunition, and I can't begin to tell you how many times that has led to an extremely irritating and frustrating death. It's one of those interesting cases where you can clearly see what has been improved on between this and more recent versions of Brutal Doom, where the reloading is very quick, very unobtrusive, and actually feels good. It feels part of the gameplay, but here, as I say, it feels rough, it feels unfinished. And that's because it is. So this right here is about 4 levels in, and this is where I lost patience with the mod in terms of constantly running out of ammunition, so I thought, sod it! We're gonna go crazy with the weaponry, and I enabled all available weapons. So here we've got the auto shotty, which is such a wonderful upgrade for the shotgun. It's a pity that it isn't available sooner. Maybe it is, maybe it's just something that I didn't really come across during those first 3 levels, but it sure packs a punch. We've also got this, which is the heavy machine gun, which, yeah, it makes a mess. It makes a mess. What more do you want? And this is, in fact, the right level that you pick it up from, so I feel less bad about skipping straight to it. But if I have a chance in a sec, I'll be able to show you just how long-winded the reload cycle is on this particular weapon. Shouldn't be too long now, nearly down to 0. Here we go. You timing it? Because, God, it is still going. Good grief. But I suppose we should probably deal with this cyber demon here before he causes too much trouble. Hey, there he goes. But for the more eagle-eyed of you out there, you may have noticed that this is, in fact, a very early version of one of the maps in the Brutal Doom single-player campaign. And it just rams home my point that this is very much a testbed, very much a prototype for things that were to come. It's a fascinating little time capsule of a WOD that lets you gain a little bit of insight into the process of iteration behind certain WODs, because it's never usually the first thing that you design. It's never usually the first thing that you slap together. It all comes with little tweaks, little bits and pieces that eventually lead to the finished product, to something that you can be happy with. Speaking of which, I'm glad they didn't stick with this particular design for the plasma gun, because it just feels wrong. It doesn't look right. The bolts that fire out of it don't really look like plasma bolts. It's like a baby corn version of the BFG. I mean, who wants a less effective version of the BFG? You just want a goddamn BFG. It is the be-all and end-all of uber weaponry. But hey, at least this still turns enemies into skeletons. But yeah, I think it's about time we check out what else we've got here in the armory. Speak of the devil, it's the good old BFG, and oh, that's a good one. Actually, screw this, I'm gonna see what this looks like out in the open. Oh, that's a full-on mushroom cloud. I actually think this is a better version of the BFG than what we ended up with in Brutal Doom. The Brutal Doom one's good and all, but this is just the right side of ridiculous. But you know what? We're not done. Yep, that is exactly what you think it is. It is a giant, stompy, pilotable mech, smack bang in the middle of ArmageDooM. I have not swapped this out for a different one. This is stage 5, and you can only imagine the noises I made when I first stumbled across this, because I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know this existed within this WOD, and this has been a secret desire of mine ever since I started Doom Mod Madness. I've been searching for a big, badass, stompy mech Doom mod, and good grief, is this ticking the boxes right now? Sure, the auto-aim may throw off a lot of the arsenal that you've got access to here, and you may die shockingly quickly in a few cases, but it's worth slogging through the rest of the game. Actually, no, it's not worth slogging through the rest of the game. Jump straight to this level, have yourself a grand old time, and thank me later. In fact, I'd say don't play any further than this point. You'll only be let down. This is the peak. This is peak ArmageDooM right here, and ideally should have been the finale for the game. Keep it short, keep it sweet, let everyone go out on a big stompy mech high, but no, after this, you end up at a UAC base, and you end up having to defend it against wave after wave after wave of demon invasions. It's a bit of a slog, a bit of a letdown after this. Just wonderful, big, stompy mech madness. But if I had to sum up all of ArmageDooM here, I would kind of describe it as a fascinating failure of a Doom WOD. There's a lot of really cool and interesting ideas on display here, but none of them really come together or click or gel in any meaningful, satisfying way. That's something that would come much later on down the line with the refinement of the Brutal Doom formula. So, as you can imagine, I wouldn't exactly recommend this WOD for everyone. It's not exactly required playing anyway, but if you're interested in the process, if you're interested in having a peek at prototypes, at early versions of things, and seeing where certain ideas may have come from, then sure, give it a whirl, but be prepared for a lot of frustrating gameplay. All I can say is that hopefully at some point in the future, this particular section right here will be greatly expanded into its own uber awesome mod. But until then, the link, as usual, is in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to let me know if there's any mods you'd like to see me cover in future episodes of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.